Welcome back everyone. Today we're gonna dive into the library. The library, it's a major lore-driving force in the universe of the Order of Curiosities, with books from various authors with a variety of topics. And today we're gonna craft a worthy addition to the existing lineup of books that I've already designed for this universe. Anyway, grab yourself a hot beverage, find yourself a comfy spot, and let's roll the intro. Roll the intro. So for the longest time, as I had the idea for the library, I always referred to that as just that, the library. But in the previous episodes, when we were designing the stamps and the stamps for different departments within the order, I used the name Bibliotheca Obscura, and the name sort of stuck. I didn't plan for it, but it sort of worked out, so I think we're gonna stick with it. Now, you know I've mentioned my love for designing fantasy book covers, and I think this Bibliotheca Obscura is gonna become a recurring segment of sorts. Hold on, we need to do something. There we go, I think we can work with this. Anyway, fantasy books. Now, the Order of Curiosities, it has a dedicated library filled with magical books, ancient magical tomes, a lot of questionable paperwork. And just in a moment, we're gonna flip through everything I've got so far. Now, there's always a temptation to design something that looks like the most important book in the universe. You know, the one with glowing runes, secret seals, and that whispers when you open it. But the truth is, even if you can say that about a fictional world, the truth is that not every book is a legendary artifact. Sometimes you need the mundane, the ordinary, because without that contrast, the extraordinary stops feeling special. So today we're gonna design the most boring book cover No, I'm just kidding. I'll save that probably for a quiet Tuesday night. I'm here to entertain you after all. Today we're gonna craft something a little bit more fun, and there is a particular book I have in mind. But before that, let's take a look at what we've got so far, just so that we are on the same page. By the way, you're gonna be able to see a progression of thinking and the different levels of desire for an artistic interpretation through the books that I've made. Now, looking back, there's a lot of things I want to change about the books I've made previously, but I think I'm just gonna wait until I have a whole pile of edits that I want to make, and I'm just gonna make them in bulk. So here are the books. I'm gonna show you the cover designs and read you the little snippets that I wrote for each one of them to give you a little bit of context. The first one is The Three Masks of the Polymorph. It's a haunting account of three magical masks, and each is from a distant culture. One of which has been believed to have led to a downfall of a really big empire over a century ago. And now the Code of Conduct is a book by the Order of Curiosities, which is an official document governing magical ethics and etiquette, and all the gray zones in between. It's almost like I thought of it as a mandatory reading to all the new initiates. Beginner's Guide to Witchcraft by Melanie Fiddles and Jaybird Brookellen. It's sort of an approachable, potion-stained textbook covering the basics of witchcraft. It's complete with doodles in the margins and questionable hex safety advice. It's educational, but it's the fun kind. The Wizarding Archetypes by Sarah Reheis. It's a socio-magical exploration of recurring wizard personas throughout history. Anything from like a brooding alchemist to the eccentric mentor and what they reveal about our worldviews within that magical world. The Talismans of Today by Scarlet King. an illustrated study of modern talismans and the subtle, often overlooked magics woven into our everyday tokens, charms, and keepsakes. Dark Ward by Milos Basic, an unsettling case of study of failed magical containment spells and the forgotten facility once known only as the Ward. Some pages are redacted, others are burned. Hearing Whispers from the End by Lyra Thorne. It's a chilling anthology of first-hand accounts from mediums and wizards who claim to have heard voices from the beyond. Some comforting, some unfinished. Still Hearing Whispers, which is a part 2 to the previous book. It's a reluctant follow-up by Lyra Thorne, delving deeper into the consequences of listening too long. In the final chapter in that book, it ends in mid-sentence. Infamous Werewolves by Markus Wolfowitz. It's an atmospheric period collection of the most notorious werewolves in magical history, complete with maps, sightings, and unfortunate letters. Polyphia by Lindsay Badger. It's a deeply personal and luminous work chronicling the concept of creative echoes. The idea that artistic energy never dies, but returns in a strange form. It's a memorial to a lost friend and written with heart and stardust. After all, we're all just dust. Dust with a meaning. Reuben Riley's Diaries by Reuben Riley. The collected ramblings, sketches, and encrypted thoughts of an unlicensed spellweaver with a very strong opinion on sandwich construction. It's unedited, unhinged, it's unmissable, and I think it's a book that Tom would have loved. Solmire by D.R. Velen. It's the story of a forgotten coastal village where the moonlight bends unnaturally and the dead occasionally leave gifts on the doorsteps. Dr. Velen weaves lore, loss, and a lot of salt water into a hauntingly beautiful fable. The Spinescript Tales by Spinescript. It's a collaborative anthology of myths, monsters, and magical mishaps, and told by many pens through one voice. It's a shared tapestry of worlds stitched from wonder. And Spinescript is also a side project to the Order of Curiosities, even though it's within it, if we can say so. I've used it to create tools for other storytellers. Graphics, typefaces, texture packs, anything that can be used to enhance a good story. And I think in the future, if there's gonna be opportunities to expand further outside of the universe and create something that can have purpose, usefulness, and meaning to others, we're always gonna try to do that. Now, going back, the next one is the Gemrite Codex by Velvian Dross. It's a practical guide and spiritual manifesto for jewel casters, stone binders, aspiring gemrites. It includes different layouts of dangerous cuts, forbidden settings, and cursed diagrams, things of that sort. It's a book that I think jewel crafters and jewel setters might use as a companion to their craft. Now, the last one, but not least, is the one that I actually designed not too long ago, and it's called The Shady Goods by Byzantine Dukas. Now, Byzantine runs his own trade of sorts, called Byzantine's Shady Goods. Byzantine himself is sort of like a smuggler of arcane oddities. He is a peddler of questionable goods, and he is a self-proclaimed, honest businessman. You don't ask where he got it, just ask what it does. If it glows, rattles, or whispers, he probably has it. Or at least, he knows a guy that has it. So naturally, he has a catalog of said shady goods he's traded before, goods that would be an interest to a particular buyer. Some of the things in his compendium are not exactly real, they're just his way of testing the waters for a particular demand. I also wanted to create a pocket edition of his shady book compendium, I just didn't have the time to sink into that yet. Now, we are more or less up to speed with what I've got so far. Now, going forward, I do keep a list. It's a catalog of sorts of books that I want to include in the story. Some are based on the ideas that I want to include, some are based on authors or characters that I would like to incorporate into the story somehow. By the way, if you have an idea for a book, drop it down in the comments. I plan to eventually make an episode dedicated to your ideas. Just make sure that it fits within the magical world. It could be on any topic that you want. You can even write a backstory if you want, or some context about the book. You can include an author name. It can even be your own name. Just leave me some liberty to adjust it a little bit so it just fits a little bit better into the universe. After all, a few of these books are already named after real people, like the Guides to Witchcraft, Polyphia, and the Wizarding Archetypes. Now, taking a look at the list, we already have some interesting ideas that we can tackle today. For example, the Smuggler's Sky by Captain Limerick. He is a former captain of a skyship that used to smuggle forbidden goods between Europe and North America. He tells his stories of unbelievable smuggling expeditions. Then we have books like The Wand Work for the Mechanically Inclined by Antonio Villarama. It's a book with anyone with hands growing out of the right places who wishes to tackle wand making as a craft. Or Please Subscribe by Tom the Fool. Seriously?
What? Well, you gotta ask them somehow. It's nicer this way. Just be cool, man. Be cool.
Anyway, so the book that we're gonna tackle today is called The Astral Conjecture by Johannes Albrecht. And to give you a little bit of a description, the Astral Conjecture, it gathers a lifetime of star maps, sketches, and midnight theories. Johannes Albrecht believes the sky is not just a backdrop, but it's a system filled with patterns, signals, and fundamental understanding of magic itself. He has detailed charts, sometimes messy, often brilliant, and always full of questions. And it really is less of a book of answers than an invitation to look up and wonder. Now, the author is not particularly interesting or an important character in this story. It's just that I sometimes like to visualize things so that I can get inspired to craft something. And himself, he has spent most nights staring at the stars, he's drawing what he sees. He's quiet, precise, endlessly curious. He finds comfort in the idea that the universe is trying to tell him something. And some call his ideas eccentric, others call them inspired. He doesn't mind either way. He just keeps watching the sky. So in short, if we highlight the key points about the book and the author, it's an overlap of magic and astronomy actually being one of the fundamental branches of understanding magic. Now, we also know it was written by a curious scholar that had way more questions than answers, even after finishing his book. And the rest is really up for our artistic interpretation. And again, using the desired feeling as an outcome and not the desired look. Now let's just straight jump into it and we'll figure out what we want to do as we go along. Now I want to start by looking for some references for inspiration and for the design of the cover. And I'll start by just diving into search mode and see if we can find anything that could spark or inspire an idea. After a little bit of browsing, I can already understand that using any modern references for astronomy books is out of the question, as they are quite too literal in their design. We're looking for a way to translate the overall theme and feeling, and looking at the reference for vintage style astronomy books, it mostly has been a miss as well. I couldn't quite find what I was looking for, even though I don't really know what it is I'm looking for just yet. Now, since I've abandoned looking at book designs as references, I decided to just go a bit deeper into the history of astronomy, and I found a few things that really piqued my interest, and I think there's something there to uncover. So let's take a look. Now, I was looking at the Creative Commons libraries. Those are libraries where you can find images that have no copyrights applied to them. It's usually stuff from a long time ago. I found these astrology maps. There was something in particular about this one, aside from its really beautiful design and all the colors, but just how the shapes overlapped. And I know this is a map and it has a very particular academic purpose, but looking at this map, I always have a feeling that you are peeking into something behind. It's as if there's two windows that allow you to peek into something in the back. And the second thing that came to my mind, a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine came to visit and we went to the museum here, the Kunstkamera Museum, and in the tower, it has an astronomy wing. And on the display, they had these huge astrolabes, which are, I guess they're tools used to map or orient yourself based on stars. And these are tools that have been used hundreds of years ago, close to 300 years or so. And I remembered all the swirling patterns that they had on them, so I started looking for some, and I found some on stock image websites, and I found almost these like pocket ones, pocket edition, and the one on the top and the bottom is sort of like a watch inspired by an astrolabe. But the one in the middle looks like something that might have been an actual tool that astronomers use. If there are any astronomy geeks out there, please help us understand what are those used for. Now, looking at the astrolabe and the map and the idea of something behind, I think I have a few ideas already. So let's jump into Photoshop. We're gonna set up the file. I'm gonna show you the entire process of how I go through designing a book. We'll just go step by step and see what we can come up with. Alright, so this is how I set up my file, and the only must-haves for me to work on a book design is so I can have two backgrounds, one light, one dark. This is usually just to check for any mistakes, to see how the shadows and the shading is working. I also brought in the map that we found and the astrolabe. There's a few things that we're gonna have to do to it eventually, like mostly color correction, and maybe we're gonna have to shade some areas a little bit differently, but we'll see. So the thing that I thought about this book, I for some reason envisioned it as a horizontal book instead of a typical portrait, more of like a landscape one. And I already brought myself some guides so that I can kind of like reference the proper sizing for it. I'm using these high quality textured book covers as a starting point. We can see right away that the borders are essentially getting squished, and it gives away the fact that we've squished the book cover, even though like you can't really tell by the texture, but you can definitely tell by the border, so we're gonna have to get rid of that. And plus, we don't really need the border. I'm not planning to use it for anything, so I think the first thing what we're gonna do is actually go ahead and remove that. Grab a selection tool, add to the selection, and we're just gonna go to content aware fill and just fill that section. Now make sure that the layer is selected, then we go to edit, content aware fill. Here we kind of like can see the preview of what that will look like. And the green portion, what it shows here, it actually shows you where it's gonna be sampling the content from in order to fill in the selected area. I think what we're gonna start with is just with the simple hue saturation adjustment. I want to pretty much just desaturate it, because I was thinking about it, and the way I've envisioned the first version, the first edition of the book, it's actually being like a bright cover, but I think it will all make sense in just a moment. So we're gonna desaturate the levels here, and we're gonna add a gradient map. And what a gradient map does is actually it remaps the whole image from the darkest to the lightest tones based on the gradient that you want to apply. So if we were to go to select, let's say as the brightest point, let's say we leave this white, but as the darkest point, brighter, right? But the darkest portions, we still want them to get dark. The only thing, I don't want to keep it white, I want to give it a little bit of a dirtier yellowish kind of look. So the next thing what I want to do is right away bring the astrolabe, and I kind of want to have this as a centerpiece to the book design. So the reason why I wanted to have this book as a landscape version, I thought that perhaps the book it's sort of like a folder that you open. It reveals the contents inside. So essentially each part on the left and on the right will be its own side, right? I hope that makes sense. Now, just looking simply at this astrolabe in the middle as a main element, as the main focal point to this whole book, it almost feels natural that everything around it will be going in circles in some way. Whether it's the type or the whatever, like graphical elements, anything that we'll decide to add essentially will have to follow this pattern. I mean, it can also sort of be something like this, right? I mean, there's like some interesting dynamic if we kind of like follow like this direction. Now, another thing that is worth to mention, the idea that I had is, so we have the map that is directly behind the book cover. And the way I thought about it to explain my idea from just looking at the map itself, I thought it would be really interesting if we took the book cover and we sort of made some sort of like windows that are open to reveal what's behind. Like maybe there is something cut out in the book itself, in the cover, that reveals whatever is behind it. Obviously, we'll have to add depth, proper shadows and lighting to it, but I think it could be an interesting idea. But before we do all of that, the first thing I want to do is to get the book cover itself textured. And I'm not gonna bore you with that, so I'm just gonna straight jump into that and we'll continue after that. So what I'm thinking to do next is we need some depth. So obviously the book is gonna be slit in the middle and then we're gonna have the windows. And since this is an insert sort of inside the book itself and it's held by the two parts of the book kind of like hugging it, we need to create cutouts, but they need to have depth. So in order to create depth, we're just gonna have to play a little bit with the blending mode of that particular layer, the layer of the book cover itself. And the way we're gonna do it is just we're gonna simply on the layer mask, we're gonna just use the hard brush to sort of mask it for now and reveal the layer behind. And now we're gonna go into the blending options of the book layer and sort of play around with the different styles and see if we can achieve a more kind of like chiseled look to the edges of the book cover. In order to sell the idea of it being almost like a chiseled look, what we're gonna go and do later on when we're set on the design is we're gonna create a separate layer with an overlay blending mode and just kind of like add the highlight at the edge of the shadow in order to sort of sell it a little bit better. And perhaps even adding a little bit of a shadow on the inner portion will also help. This is right away feels like it has more chiseled depth than this soft shadow. But we're not gonna do this just now. I think what I want to do first is actually to come up with the design first, and only during the last portion of the process we're gonna go in, add those shadows, add those highlights, wherever they're needed, to sort of make it feel more textured, more believable. But for now, what I'm gonna do next is I'm just gonna bring in the typography and just go from there and see what we can come up with, where this exploration takes us. I have no idea, but let's give it a go. I'm bringing in an astronomical pattern, and we're not just gonna use it as is. We're gonna let the flow of these lines sort of dictate the flow of our design. And at this point, we're just gonna correct it and draw on it to help it feel like an intentional part of the design. To add a sprinkle of the author's personal touch, we're gonna distress the design a bit, add some more magical symbols to help elevate the look and tie the things a little bit better together. Now we're using that rhythm of the design to do the little window cutouts in the cover to reveal the first page of the book. And it right away feels like a natural placement for these as we're using the layout's flow, and it just feels very organic for them to be placed there. So I have to pause for a second. I was staring at the progress of this book, and particularly how the astrolabe is nested inside a book. And I think I got an idea for the Shady Goods Pocket Edition. I mean, it was right in front of me. Let's take a look for a second. So we have the large version of the catalog, and right there, in the middle, is the Pocket Compendium version. I don't know, I just thought there's something metaphorical about a book inside a book kind of idea. As if the Pocket Edition only shows you the heart of the catalog. I think it works really well. I really quickly had to try the idea and it turned out to be great, and I just thought I'd share it with you. Anyway, back to our book design. To add more detail on the embossed lettering, we're gonna add some highlights where we think the light would bounce from the sudden depth drop on the cover material. Also, we're going to go over and shade some areas a bit more aggressively, specifically in the bevel of the cutouts. And the last big change to the design is I decided to create a beveled edge around each flap of the book. Alright, I think we're done here. I mean, I think it turned out to be quite an unusual style for me. I often lean into heavy ornamental design when I do my book covers. So this was a breath of fresh air. I really enjoyed it. So this is the design. We've retained the texture of the book, and by using that circular rhythm, which feels very natural for this sort of book, we've laid out our typography, made it slightly embossed in the cover. We've added a bunch of new symbols and distress marks to the design, and we've closed the loop by creating that chiseled look to the border and that main arch. And as a result, this book doesn't feel flat, it has some depth to it. And the astrolabe is being hugged by the book itself, and it almost feels like a companion to the book. And the only thing that I feel is left questionable for me is the little windows. I wasn't sure if they should have some sort of a glass or a transparent material in between, but I think we're just gonna leave it as is for now. I've also created another version of the book. I, for some reason, wanted to try it in orange, gave it a more worn out look, and I think it turned out to be interesting as well. Maybe that's like a second version of the book, or it's one that Johannes owned himself. Regardless, I really enjoyed crafting this one. Let me know what you think of it, what you think of the library, and I can't wait for your suggestions so we can come back to this recurring segment. And as usual, thank you for being here. Stay kind, stay curious, and go create something because it is absolutely worth it. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.